Hello and good morning. This is Daybreak on Trust TV, and it's a lovely morning here in the nation's capital. My name is Ibrahim Yusuf.
And I am Zainab Bala. Thank you so much for taking time to join us this beautiful morning. It's the 30th of January 2022. Ibrahim, how is your week going?
Well, the week is going fine. So far, so good.
Okay. Well, today on Daybreak, World Bank 2.5% GDP projection for Nigeria versus 4.2% target set in the 2022 appropriation bill. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the show will continue. Just stay. All right, welcome back to the program. We sincerely apologize for that breach in transmission as we're trying to fix some technical difficulties. Well, today on the program, World Bank 2.5% GDP projection for Nigeria versus 4.2% target set in the 2020 appropriation bill. And as usual, we'll also be bringing you top headlines from the national dailies. I would also be bringing you top stories and reports in the last 24 hours. But before that, let's take a look at news highlights.
Well, the first story here we have about 27 months, the federal government has lifted the suspension of Twitter operations in Nigeria. Now, the decision was announced by the Chairman, Technical Committee of Nigeria Twitter Engagement and Director General, National Information Technology Development, Kashifu Inuwa Abdullahi. Abdullahi, in a statement in Abuja on Wednesday, said the approval was given following a memo written to the President, Muhammadu Buhari, by the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Professor Isa Ali Ibrahim. Now, according to the statement, Twitter has agreed to meet all the conditions set by the federal government.
And ahead of the forthcoming APC's National Convention for Northwest Zonal Youth Leader election, Shatima Umar has indicated interest to contest for the position. Now, the young politician made the reaffirmation to run for the position at a press conference in Maiduguri. He said his decision to seek for the office is to reposition the party and represent the social and economic needs of the young people at the party level. He promised to engage youth and women on governance and decision-making processes in the region and pledged to empower youths if elected.
And moving away from politics to security now, the police in Kano have arrested one Awal Abdul Rashid alias Lauje for allegedly kidnapping and murdering a 13-year-old girl. Now, the police spokesman in Kano, Abdullahi Kiyawa, said this in a statement on Tuesday. Kiyawa said the suspect kidnapped the girl and took her to an uncompleted building where he strangled her, cut her throat, and buried her remains in a shallow grave, adding that the suspect then demanded a ransom of 1 million naira from her parents. The police said Abdul Rashid confessed that he had earlier kidnapped a 3-year-old brother of the victim and demanded a ransom of 2 million naira.
Quite tragic, isn't it, Ibrahim?
It is quite tragic. I mean, for someone to be so callous, you know, and It's really disheartening when you figure out when you find it, how people do things these days, you know? You know,
it's really sad that in recent times we've seen, you know, cases like this popping up. Some will say, is it poverty? Some have attributed this, you know, to cultism and all of that.
Well, I think it's just a question of mindset. I mean, like, there are lots of people out there that are really, really poor. No matter how poor they are, they will not subject themselves to these kind of things. So it's just a question of the mindset, you know? It doesn't matter how rich or how poor you actually are. If you actually have that mindset, then you can carry out all these callous acts.
Well, we really do hope, you know, we subsequently don't get to see issues like this propping up. Well, you're still watching Daybreak on Trust Television. It's now time for us to take a look at the 13th of January in world history. Quite a number of events, that happened in history in the course of time. And now talking about in 1970, Colonel Odumeagu Ojukwu flees Biafra into exile, leaving his deputy Philip Effiong to surrender to the Nigerian army, unofficially ending the Nigerian Civil War. Isn't that quite very interesting?
Where were you in 1970?
Okay, let's not talk about that right now. Okay, another remarkable event that happened in history is in 1915. The worst earthquake in Italian history kills 30,000 people. Now, the quake hit the town of Avezzano, about 100 kilometers east of Rome. And in 2000, Bill Gates steps down as CEO of Microsoft. Now, Gates co-founded Microsoft in 1975 together with Paul Allen. And in 2012, the cruise ship Costa Concordia sinks, killing 32 people. The ship's captain was later accused of imprudence, negligence, and incompetence.
Well, that's a mouthful for one person.
Isn't it?
So maybe they're just trying to give a dog a bad name to hang it because they had to blame someone.
Is that so? All right, so let's move on. What's there for us, Abraham?
All right. Well, so the next we're going to give you the top stories in the last 24 hours. For example, now the tricycle ban was lifted in Kano. It caused a lot of chaos. In the past couple of days, a lot of people trekking and whatnot. And well, it has finally been lifted, so I think the residents of Kano now can breathe a sigh of relief.
Right. Well, let's take a look at that report.
Now, 3 days since the tricycle riders in Kano State commenced their strike action, the situation seems to have been taking a new dimension. This tricycle that you are seeing here in Kano Roads and Traffic Agency were brought in by different tricycle riders after they were vandalized by some hoodlums in many parts of the state. Earlier yesterday, the Association of Tricycle Riders in Kano called on its members to return to work, but it appears there are different faction of the Tricycle Association. Another faction instructed the riders not to come out. So as of today, some people have came out for their businesses and others choose to remain at home. So it appears those who remains at home are now following street by street, attacking those who came out. Now, earlier today, the managing director of Kano Roads and Traffic Agency informed us that the state governor has directed the agency to repair any tricycle that was vandalized or damaged in the course of carrying out their operation. So the situation here in Kano is in two ways. One association has called on the riders to return to work, and the other association has instructed the riders to continue staying at home, arguing that they have not reached any logical conclusion between the Association of Tricycle Riders and the Kano State government. So today, some have come out, some are still at home. That's why those who are still at home are probably the ones attacking those who came out. And now they have brought their tricycle to Kano Roads and Traffic Agency to be repaired.
Well, that report from Kano there giving us an insight into the recent lifting of the ban on tricycles. It's when you have a certain means of transport that is really quite popular with the people and all of a sudden it's not there, it causes a lot of confusion.
For me, I really like tricycles. I just really wish that even here in the capital city, it would be allowed in certain parts of the place. But people are still struggling, to cope with that. And it's really difficult to get cars to get you to certain places.
Exactly.
And for a place like Kano, it's going to be really tragic for people.
Yes, it was very difficult for a lot of people to actually move around. So a lot of people actually started keeping fit, because they started walking a lot.
Fit bike folks.
Exactly.
All right, let's take a look at some more reports on insecurity in Zamfara and other parts of northern Nigeria. Zamfara State Chapter of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, said it will resist any attempt by the state government to intimidate and harass its members. The major opposition PDP in the state alleged that the state government planned to use instrument of state to arrest its principal officers with the aim of silencing the PDP to play its role of opposition in Zamfara state. The appeal to the United States of America.
The government's delegation is in Zamfara state to commiserate with the people and government over the recent bandits' attack in some communities in Anka and Bukuyum local government areas where dozens were killed. Defense Minister Bashir Magashi pledged federal government's commitment to rid the country of banditry and security challenges.
Condone the families of all those who lost their lives in the efforts to maintain peace in Zamfara state, especially those from Anka and Bukuyum, for what actually happened. So we have the details. We want to assure you that the government will just look the other side without coming to the aid of the victims and the survival of the families. And the government would encourage and assist the government of Zamfara state, do what is necessary, bring out the villages that are affected by these bandits' activities. So on behalf of the federal government, the Commander-in-Chief would like on his behalf to commiserate with the people of Zamfara for the loss of lives and properties as a result of the incidents that happened in Anka and Bukwa.
Governor Bello Matawalle wants the federal government to secure more military hardwares and deploy in fighting banditry, insurgency and other criminalities in the country. He said that Zamfara forests have become hideouts for bandits who step out of the state to commit their crimes in any part of the country and return to hide in the forests.
This will be foreseen from the recent calls by some leaders for the people to take up arms to defend themselves. It is a sign of lawlessness when the state lost its monopoly over the instrument of coercion. As a matter of urgency, the federal government should procure armed personnel carrier APC and deploy them across all parts of the country. If at least 100 APC can be made available, they will go a long way in tuning the tide of the war against the bandit in a short period of time, inshallah. I want to draw the attention of the federal government to the fact that the pocket of insurgency in many parts of the north are interrelated in some instances. Evidence has been found of connections between Boko Haram and some of the bandit groups operating in the northwest. There should be a comprehensive review of strategy of fighting insurgency. We need a more workable plan of action tailored explicitly in tune with the reality on the ground. This is a glaring call for us to step up effort in the fight before the dreadful monster consume our region and the country as a whole.
The state has become the epicenter of banditry, with bandit leaders like Bello Turji in control of ungoverned spaces in parts of the state.
That was a report from Zamfara and other parts of the northern Nigeria on insecurity. You know, it's really disheartening these days when you watch the news and you find all these reports about insecurity, people being killed, people being forced out of their homes and whatnot. And it's really alarming when you look at the rate at which it's going on right now.
You know, it's really a challenge for us down here, and we really do hope that 2022 will bring about change and maybe we'll see some form of reformation in the whole insecurity situation. Yeah,
we do hope that, and that is our prayer. And the worst part of the situation is right now we don't even have to deal with the problem of insecurity from within. We also have to deal with it from without as well, because we've always been singing this thing, secure our borders, and transborder crime.
Porous borders.
Exactly, very porous, and transborder crime is something that is becoming a major issue now. So let's take a look at this report.
The Kwara Area Commander of the Nigerian Customs Service, Controller Hussaini Ahmed, disclosed this while addressing a news conference in Ilori. He said that a car was searched at Bukuro based on intelligence report and found to contain the pump-action cartridges suspected to have been smuggled into the country. The ammunition, he added, is worth 1,444,000 naira. Still on the seizure for the year, he said 2,971 bags of parboiled rice were seized. On Revenue Drive, Controller Ahmed also disclosed that his command generated and remitted a total of 9.8 billion naira between January and December last year.
I make bold to say that from January 2021 to December 2021, the command has generated and remitted the sum of 9,848,505,922 naira 48 kobo, which surpassed the previous or 2020 revenue with 2,942,090,047 naira 18 kobo. Under my leadership as the Pioneer Custom Area Controller from July 2019 to December 2021, which is barely 29 months now, the command has generated and remitted the sum of 19,159,240,134,19 kobo to the Federation account.
This is 2 billion naira higher than the 2019 revenue.
All right, it's now time for us to take a look at some of the leading stories on our dailies this morning. But before that, let's take a quick break.
But in a situation where you find that a person look like this,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Welcome back. It's still daybreak, and we are right here in the studios. And right now, we're going to take a look at the review of the papers. We're going to look at some of the headlines that we have on our dailies for this morning. And right now, we have a reviewer in the studio who's actually a publisher, Summit Post News. That's Nelson Yakubu Omonu, and he will be with us here for the newspaper review. So we'll go straight into it. Zainab?
Okay, let's take a look at some of the stories on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. The lead story there states, terrorists overrunning our states, Zulum Matawale cry out. And the riders, 2 local governments on the ISWAP occupation. This is according to Borno governor. Military have no modern weapons. This is according to Zamfara state governor. Deployed to Kano jets, 1,000 armored personnel carriers. Troops well equipped. And this is in response by the Nigerian military. And you also see a picture there that shows some governors and the Nigerian military who went on a sympathy visit by the federal government delegation to Government House in Gusau yesterday. And on page 4, federal government lifts Twitter ban 7 months after, warns users. You'd also see other stories there. Why executive orders 1 and 5 fail to make businesses easy. Kano tricycle riders call off strike. And on page 6, you'd see 18 killed in fresh plateau attack. Power firms lose 1.6 trillion in 7 years over unutilized electricity. And on page 31, on the Daily Trust newspaper, Tinubu will not endorse candidates until constitution is changed. Afenifere. If you'd like to see details of that story, you can grab a copy of the Daily Trust newspaper. And other stories, Buhari governors, others mourn as ex-oil governor Alao Akala dies at 71. So these are some of the major stories on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
And moving on now to the Blueprint newspaper, which has the banner headline, "In Zulum on insecurity, peace has returned to 11 local governments, 2 others still under ISWAP." And the riders here are terrorists celebrating marriages, collecting taxes. And another one that says, "Gunmen abduct several traders on Kaduna Highway." And of course, bandits released without charges, Matawale alleges. And another headline on the front page of Blueprint says, "Buhari, Atiku, others mourn as ex-governor Akala dies at 71. And another headline on the page of Blueprint newspaper says, "2023 presidency, why Afenifere won't support any candidate." That is credited to Adebanjo. That's on page 5 of the Blueprint. And of course, petrol subsidy. Kwara NLC raises committee for nationwide protest. That is also on page 5 of the Blueprint newspaper. Another headline, one concerning politics now on the Blueprint newspaper, says APC convention will first address litigations and fallout of congresses, and that is credited to the Caretaker Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee of the APC. That story is also on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. And another one on page 23 has Discos rejected 248 megawatts monthly in 2021. Those are stories on the front pages of the Blueprint newspaper. So for more details, grab a copy of that.
Okay, let's take a look at other stories on the Punch newspaper this morning. The lead story there, terrorists on the rampage in Plateau, Niger, kill 52, abduct hunters, others. And the riders, Niger terrorists tied victims' hands to their backs before shooting them. This is according to residents, quite tragic. You'd also see another rider stating Lalong demands arrest as invaders gunned down 18 in fresh Plateau community attack. And there's a very huge picture there showing ammunitions and some seizures by the Nigerian Customs Service. You'd also see other stories. Oil marketers begin establishment of auto gas conversion centers in filling stations. This is on page 24 on the Punch newspaper. And on page 7, until now, 2 Borno local governments under Boko Haram's firm control. This is according to the state governor, Zulum, telling senators. You'd also see over 3,000 killed in road crashes in 6 months. This is a report by the NBS, and you'll find the details of that story on page 24 on the Punch newspaper. INEC's 20 million new voter target, shaky. 2.4 million registered. This is on page 2 on the Punch newspaper. And you'd also see workers, retirees kick as federal government plans 620 billion loan from pension funds. Shonikan tributes flow as family begins consultations on burial. You'd also see one of the stories that made their headway on most of the dailies this morning. It's about President Buhari lifting Twitter ban after 222 days suspension. You'd also see the story about NDLEA raids Lekki drug joints, arrest the general, others recovers tramadol cannabis. And on page 8 on the Punch newspaper this morning, you'd also see Fayemi meet Tinubu over 2023 presidency, Ekiti governorship polls. These are some of the major stories on the Punch newspaper.
Next, we go to the Nation newspaper, which has the major headline as bandits kill 51, burn houses in attacks on communities. As 2 riders here, many feared dead, kidnapped on Kaduna Abuja Highway. That's the defense minister is also in Zamfara. And president orders sustained military onslaught. That's and then the Senate president says Nigerians want action, not excuses. And of course, we have another headline, still the one making the rounds. Federal government lifts Twitter ban, but with conditions. These are found on the front page of The Nation newspaper. And in business, it says equity gain 981 billion naira in 6 days. Investors earn 8.7 trillion since 2022. That's on the front page of The Nation. And of course, another headline here reads, ex-governor Alao Akala found dead in his bathroom. And there's another sad story here. Man kills own 3 kids, keeps bodies in a freezer. And of course, that's on page 4 of The Nation. And on page 20, Ikoyi building construction began before approval. So those are the stories that you can find on the front page of The Nation newspaper.
Okay, let's take a look at one more paper talking about the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian leads with the story, federal government leaves Twitter ban after 222 days, 546.5 billion naira economic losses. And the writers there state, stakeholders divided, say federal government should not gag platform. ECOWAS court plans to deliver judgment next week. And you'd also see, we never left Twitter, Nigerians react. Yeah, this is quite true, because a lot of young people have been using the virtual private network to actually use the platform, although there has been information about how unsafe, the VPN is, but we always find a way, to cut corners through these things, particularly when it has to do with social media. Now, you see other stories there. Nigerians tired of killings, says Lowell. Declare for 2023 presidency, Igbo politicians, technocrats urged. You'd also see the story about gunmen killing 21 in Plateau community. Buhari, Makinde, others pay tributes as Nigerians mourn late Oyo Governor Alao Akala. You'd also see a story on page 2 on the Guardian newspaper. COVID-19 summit urges Nigeria to galvanize other nations to seek debt relief. IMF wants global collaboration to boost Africa's vaccination drive. You'd also see other stories. Resign now. Dewey tells appointees eye elective officers. And on page 4 on the Guardian newspaper, why ex-SGF Babachir Lawal has not reported to EFCC in alleged 544 million naira contract scam. So these are some of the major stories on the Guardian newspaper, and we'll move straight into the review. And as we have earlier told you, we have the publisher Summit Post News, Nelson Yakubu Omonu, here to review the stories that made the headlines this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Zainab.
It's nice to have you on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's begin with the story on the Daily Trust newspaper that states, talking about security, that states terrorists overrunning our states. Zulum Motawali cry out. And some of the writers, they are saying, like the one from Zamfara State Governor, saying military have no modern weapons. And the military, on the other hand, are saying our troops are well equipped. Could you react, to this?
Thank you. Let me start from congratulations. Today is the anniversary of when the war ended, and we are here. There's Nigeria because the war ended. So, but it was not declared today. I think on the 15th, and that's why we have armed forces. Thank you. Then quickly, I need to point out something on the Kano incident. The person the guy that kidnapped a 30-year-old girl and
the 13-year-old girl.
Yes, those are signs of a deteriorating society. Our value system, see, listen, it's not about poverty. It is not about poverty. Technically, we can say maybe poverty is also part of it, but most importantly, any society where how much you are carrying, you are holding, is to the extent people will respect you. People will do everything to belong. Yes, we have so collapsed everything in our country and narrow everything down to money. And anywhere you have that kind of scenario, you can't help it. This crime will continue to rear their ugly head, and we are not seeing the end until our value system is recalibrated, we are going to be around here for a while, because the way economy is closing, the more the economy is closing nose around us, the more people are worshipping how much you are carrying, the money you have. And if money is what determines the respect people give you and not your character, then I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do about this.
Still to touch on that, you made mention of recalibrating our value system. How do we go about doing that?
That what the 1999 Constitution, of course, see, like where you come from, there are do's and don'ts, like norms. There are things that are acceptable in societies. Like, for instance, if we say Nigeria, that is too broad. But if you narrow it down to the value system of where you come from, when you were growing up, seeing that people who work for 35 years, they live moderate life, they have, people question your source of wealth. The way you live your life is, you see, the way you live your life is proportionate to how people are going to take you in the society, and it's connected to when it comes to engaging leadership or maybe choosing leadership from within a society. It is what people know about you. But today, to become a governor, of course, you need a very heavy, deep pocket. Now, if you need deep pocket, people do everything to get money in order to become leaders in society. It is not character that determine, or the person's personnel that determine the leadership role you get in your society, but the money you have. So in that case, you look for money by all means, so that if it comes to contest for power, you can have an upper hand. Okay. So let me come back to the state of security in Zamfara and Borno, as the governors are already crying. So let me weigh in this way. The ding-dong over counter-accusations over whether the military is equipped or not equipped, or modernized, our military is modernized or not. These are parts of the larger problem. But I think that when there's an accusation there that you read out, that one of the governors accused that I think it's Zamfara, that bandits have been released without charges. Without charges. So I think that when you start using people as scapegoats, I mean, others, it will serve as deterrent to others. Yes. When you have a situation where it's as if tactically, whether we are supporting the authorities, I don't know, I can't point a finger exactly at what is going on. That offense that is as serious as kidnapping, banditry and all that, you treat it with levity. What are you technically telling the people? That you can continue to do this? After all, if you spend some months in prison, somebody will come for you, or in a way, they will just fix things and release you. So it's not going to stop. The whole of this is not only about military, it's about our resolve to end this and end this now. Yes. If we have resolved to end this now, I bet you, give us another 3 months, we are done and dusted with this. Though poverty factor is there, young people are unemployed, we are still going to have deviances here and there. But the core of it, like the type we have in Zamfara and Borno State, I think Governor Zulu mentioned that about 2 local governments are still within the control of ISWAP.
Exactly.
Is it the Nigerian army that liberated Liberia, that liberated Sierra Leone? Is this the Nigerian army? Was it equipment that made that empowered Nigerian army under ECOMOG to liberate Liberia and Sierra Leone? That is the question we should be asking. Then what is it? There's a missing link. Is it that tactically some people are supporting what is going on? If it is like that, then it's sad. If it is not, governance is about the people, and the people they are under siege. The government of the day, that is President Muhammadu Buhari, a retired general, respected for his military doggedness. Seriously, we don't know what is going on.
You know, in his interview, exclusive interview with channels, and the NTA, he mentioned specifically that his government, since coming to power in 2015, have succeeded, in manning the whole security situation, particularly in the northeast. And, with this statement coming from the Borno State governor, it seems like there's still much to be done.
That is a political statement. The president's statement is just political. Because from all indication, I think on Punch, it was 52, not only in Borno, I think Niger, Zamfara and the rest, 52 kids at once. What? So, and the president is telling us that he has been able to, how? So the evidence of the effort he has put in the last 6 years should be about that maybe one killed. And maybe after next week, maybe another scam. But this is becoming a recurrent. This is what we wake up to see on pages of newspaper every day.
Right.
So
while we're still on that, there's this ongoing debate about where the brunt actually lies, because we've heard before governors being addressed in some places as chief security officers of their states. So where does the responsibility actually lie? Is it with the governors or is it with the president? Because if you say that the governors, they'll tell you that the military is not under them. They don't command the military because the military has their commander in chief. And but still we go back and we still point fingers at the governors. So where do we actually put the blame? Or where does the responsibility lie?
The system we run.
Yes.
We copied it from the United States by 90%. This presidential system, and we copied it from the United States. The United States president, one time, I'll get the name handy. He said he was debating. It was like in a meeting with some of his officials and all that. And when the argument was becoming too much, he landed hand on the table and said, "The buck stops here." So in presidential system, the buck stops on the president's table. In the kind of presidential system we have fashioned for ourselves, what the president fails to do, or what he is able to do, impact positively on the larger society. The structure of our federalism today suppose that the president has both knife and yam, so he can do anything he likes. But let me say this, the person that cannot appoint the army, see, constitutionally, no governor can tell the army, go and do this. No governor can tell the army, the police, go and do this. Down to civil defense, down to correctional prison officers, they cannot, governors can. So I don't know, this is not a question. The question is the buck stops on the president's table. Okay. And I think we should leave governors out of it. But I think what the federal government can do is look at what you're giving to governors as security votes. Analyze it. See the cost benefit and see what they are doing with the money. Is it really justified that we should be giving them money? I agree that yes, there are some backroom deals that we don't know. But why not have it down to 30% of what we have now? Then this 70% of what you are giving them as security votes, plunge it back to fighting insecurity. And then quickly, I thought that with the challenge we are facing now, we should quickly do something about this traditional role, empowering traditional rulers. You know those days that they had roles to play. The situation was a bit different. See, let me say this. See, we are from societies that is at lower level now. So why not empower these people who have the first-hand information? They have, where you have maybe a first-class chief in a particular area, he also, down the line, he has his own people who will, anybody that comes into the society, if they start seeing new faces, they report to the higher traditional ruler that, look, I'm seeing influx of 1 or 2 persons who are. So I think the part of the solution, again, apart from the military approach, because that seems to have dragged for too long, 6 years since this government came, we have not really, it's just that the urban areas we have been able to push back, but our territories are still being held by ISWAP. So I don't know. You see, number one, we have to do more with the traditional rulers, because these things are happening at the local level in our communities, and that is where they are traditional rulers. But they are helpless because the Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, I don't know how to describe it, but it was a good start in 1999. But we thought that down the line, as we take off from there, we'll start panel-beating the DC. But politics is not helping us. Yes, politics is not helping us to at least to panel-beat this thing to a current reality. When insecurity started rearing its ugly head, I thought that the National Assembly will just come quickly and say, okay, let us see how we can empower the traditional rulers to take charge of their society, of their communities. And when you do that, the traditional ruler will report directly. He can call the governor or call the nearest military formation that we are beginning to see 2 or 3 persons that we don't know gathering, so that if it is things like that are neat in the board, it won't be allowed to fester for too long. Then when it's out of hand, before you call the military, and by then these people, whether they are from across the borders, just like you pointed out earlier, because of the crisis in Libya and the spillover effect. So if we see them, we should know them. And the federal government or federal officials or states, this thing cannot know them. It's the traditional rulers that can know new people that has come into their society, into their communities, and how to deal with. And I think that one, traditional ruler. The second one is the military, the accusation and all that. See, first, if you like, bring the US Army to Nigeria, as modernized as they are, bring them to Nigeria. And political interferences or political will is absent. See, there's nothing that can be achieved. So we must all be on the same page. That look, with the equipment we have, we can. These are not organized army. I agree that it's a bit difficult to fight. These are not even guerrilla. They are not living within the people. They are living in bushes and all that. That we can use modern technology. We map areas and try to annihilate these people. I am not saying that kill them, but if you can arrest them. Then, thirdly, we should also come down to the issue of if you are caught as a kidnapper, as a bandit, or as anything, it should be treated as such. So that deterrent is even more punishment than any other thing. When you know that the law is waiting for you, I mean, you will think twice.
Right. Well, now let's take a look at other stories. We're seeing renewed attacks in Plateau State, and many have, cried out, saying maybe because we're looking forward to the 2023 elections, and we're seeing all these popping up.
Even of 2023 election season, they've been killing in Plateau. See, it's all boiled down to, if we say Zamfara, Borno, maybe we'll just try to say that it's because they are border states. So maybe influx from across the borders. But Plateau is in the central. So what is going on? See, there is in Plateau, I think there is actually fight for space. Yeah, there's, apart from politics, there's a fight for, pressure is coming in on the central Nigeria because of what is going on, and the receding of Lake Chad and all that. So pressure is mounting because more people are coming to the central Nigeria, and that is why the insecurity in north central states of Kogi, Plateau and all that, Nasarawa, is really is taking its toll on these states. So we still boil down to the government on how they use these security apparatus to deal with, and not all militarily now. There are other issues. You empower the people to see there's nothing that happened that traditional rulers don't know. Seriously. A sitting traditional ruler cannot say, maybe in one of the local governments under him, where there's a traditional ruler, and that one too has mother keys under him and all that down the line. They report to themselves. But it still boils down to empower them, give them specific role on how to deal with these issues.
You know, at some point, these traditional rulers in Plateau State actually came together to actually find ways to curtail the whole insecurity in that state, because the crisis in that area seemed to be, is also peculiar to kind of religious crisis and all of that, but we are still seeing these issues popping up. What really are they doing wrong? That
is politicians manipulating religion, because these people have lived together over time. Those days, as far as I know, the crisis in Plateau started from around 2000. That is a year after we returned to democracy. Why not before that time? In a bid to get hold of power, people do all kinds of things. People penetrate where they shouldn't penetrate and say things they shouldn't say. And in the end, like the first crisis in Plateau, I think in 2000 or so, started and all that. And you see, one thing with crisis is that if it starts, there will be that. It's like action reaction, and it is a cycle, and it continues like that. But the traditional rulers that came together that you're talking about, they can't really do much, because there's nothing the constitution say about what they can do. There's no constitutional rule assigned to them to, like, if there's anything, if you have, for instance, if a military formation that is located within the domain of a traditional ruler, he cannot ask the GOC, for instance, not order. But he cannot tell him that, see, there's nothing that empowers him to go to traditional ruler and, the military formation to say, see, we are beginning to see gathering of people around. Please, is there anything you can do? No. You will have to report to a local government chairman. No matter how big is any traditional ruler, his report is under the control of a local government chairman. That is the local government and chieftaincy affair and maybe commissioner. And politicians will always, even if they see something, sometimes they will look the other way because of their political interest. So it still boils down to government will have to look at the issue of Plateau again. Religion, yes, but why were they not fighting in Plateau before the year 2000? Yes, it's not entirely religion. Our people have lived side by side based on their religion for a very long time. Yes, if you go to states like Plateau, Kogi, and you see in the same family, some people are Christians, some people are Muslim, and they live side by side. A Christian can go to buy Quran for maybe his sister's daughter or son. I do that a lot. I have 3 sisters. I have 3 sisters, two married Muslim, 1 married Christian. And the ones that married Muslim, their children, if they want to graduate from this Quranic school, they will always insist that I pay for their graduation and buy their Quran and everything they need.
Really, that's how it's supposed to be, but you still see situations, particularly in Plateau State. Like presently, there is an area called Angorogo in Plateau State, predominantly a Muslims Hausa community. And it is very, very difficult for you to actually see Christians wanting to go to that area. I also know an area in Plateau State that they call Du. It's a place where the former state governor resides, and it is very difficult for you to see Muslims trying to even go to that area. What really can be done to change that kind of scenarios?
See, confidence building measure. See, politicians will have to roll back. See, we have to narrow a requirement for leadership recruitment to competence. To see, people leverage on parochial mundane societal issues like that, like religion, like this, like ethnicity, because some people, when they champion things like that, at the next election they come to stand. Well, now we defend this territory. You get it. But if, see, it's all politics. All those Angwarogo do and all that, all those stratifications you are seeing, is just seed of discourse that have been sown by politicians.
But for how long are we going to carry that?
And for as long as we are ready to be well, we need to get well. And getting well is, if the political interference is leading, like I pointed out earlier, there was Plateau before 2000. It has been there. There were people of other religions before in Plateau, before year 2000. Why were they not fighting? That is the question. Why were they not fighting? We return to democracy. The next thing is, there are things you can't just really say. Now, it's political interference that is causing most of this stratification, strife and all that. Christians don't go here. Who says so? Go to places like Borno, like you see people living, I mean, amongst each other, and there's no problem. So this is religion. I mean, the politicians that are manipulating religion so that they become ethnic champion. When it's time for politics, they carry this garment of we are the defender of our people. Yes, we are the defender of our people. And there are even some governors that have been tagged as you go to Plateau, there are successive governors. There's been always this one is defending this one is all those. So we just need to redirect how, if I know that by trying to spite other religions or people of other faiths, it's not going to benefit me politically, what is the need to do it? But if that is what will give me power, because power is sweet, I will have to leverage on it. And that means I have to polarize my people with other people that don't sell land to these people, even rentage. There are some places you go to rent a commodity. They won't give you, because they feel that you are from other religions and all that.
So I think this still boils down to the point that you earlier made about recalibration of our value system.
That's right.
And when we empower the traditional society, the traditional institutions, I think we can start from there, because it has to begin from the grassroots.
That's right.
All right, so let's move away a little bit from politics and insecurity. One of the major stories that it's everywhere now is the Twitter ban that was lifted by the federal government, and the Guardian actually carried it and says that there was economic losses of 546 billion naira during the period that Twitter was shut down. So what's your reaction to that?
Welcome development is good. I think for now we don't have to cut corners. It's not everybody that can do that can cut corners. But now that is all comers, you see that those whose means of livelihood is dependent on that on Twitter and the social media, their business will come back alive again. But the question is, do we need 7 months to be able to go through this?
Yeah, well, they said they actually gave Twitter conditions, and Twitter agreed to those conditions before they were released, because the government had problems with how the platform was being used. Because I think it's not a social media problem; it's a problem of usage. I
agree. I agree that even those are multinationals, and those are multi-billion-dollar companies. So they are supposed to. Nigeria is a huge market for Twitter. They are supposed to. I agree that they are supposed to pay tax. Yes, they are supposed. Yes, because I don't. Before now, apart from those that are using it to boost their business and all that, I don't know whether Twitter has an employee in Nigeria and all that. I quite agree. I was in agreement with the federal government when that ban came, especially how the slighted the slight on the president and all that.
Also, a lot of people actually thought it was out of spite. Yeah, the president felt spite that Twitter was used to do that, and then as a reaction, he banned them.
Whatever, action has been taken,
Yes.
and Twitter has been forced to make amends, is good. But the 7 months was too long to find common ground. But thank God, finally it's here. You can see the amount Guardian quoted there, more than 546. That is lots of money. There are too many youths who are surviving with social media, especially the advertorials and all that. They run adverts for people. They manage social media handles for people and all that, because that is the best way. That is the best invention of man, the internet, to be able to, if you are here, a little creativity you have, you put it out there. You know of this lady, you see, what is that? Sally, is it Sally? S-A-L-L-E. The very short video, the 17 years old girl that was selling, that sells granite or something around, has very good voice to sing. And just in a corner like this, a very short clip was taken and put on the social media. I think within a week, Rihanna was attracted. Major producers were attracted to her, and her life has changed. And so many, and so many young men. It's a way to promote their talent. So it's a welcome development.
Okay, now with the lifting of this ban, some are worried as well that maybe the federal government might want to gag the social media platform somewhere.
Like Amnesty International said, the ban was wrong in the first place. That is a way of curtailing freedom of information. Yes. So whatever. I think that the federal government cannot, the way it is now, if they have unbanned Twitter, how are they going to gag it? Is it to monitor it or something? I don't think so.
Well, lots of people actually believe that the balance needs to be struck. You understand, between what is free speech, what is defamation. You understand? If I say I have a right to free speech and I come to Twitter and I insult you, you also have a right not to be defamed. So how do we strike this balance?
That is why we have a cyber crime law. Those things are already covered. And I think that the organ of government, I like to mention NOA always. If their problem is funding, government should fund them to be able to reach out to people. See, rudimentary, most people don't even know that there's law against maybe, talking to you. If you read comments of most people online, and if those they are referring to want to react the way in proportionate to the comments, you will see many court cases. But truthfully, you need to know that something is an offense before you, and that has to do with government organs that are responsible for enlightening citizens. But they are not doing much at the moment. You get it? Right. Now that government has unbanned this, we think that, I personally think that there should be a follow-up, a kind of a plan to sensitize Nigerians on the responsible use of the social media. You let them know that this thing is not only to attack people or to attack people's personality or to defame them, but you can actually sensitize youth on the potential in the social media. Can take too many out of, some are using it negatively, but there's still positive aspect of it. Right. Two is huge. Millions will earn their living from there, but it will have to depend on what government is able to communicate to them that, listen, you don't have to use this to insult the government or this, but this is the opportunity that is available in this area. This is what you can do. So those seminars are there, but most times, most youths cannot pay for some of these seminars to attend, to be able to learn what they can do with the social media to better their life, their lives, instead of using it as source of attack on other people's characters and all that. So government will have to, banning Twitter is one thing, but another thing is ensuring that as they're coming back, you have to put in place a plan to be able to bridge the gap of communication. There's misconception in the whole of this.
Right.
If you tell me you can use Facebook to boost even if your business is in Kara Namoda and there's internet there, you can just snap something and put there that you are doing. If you mix this with mix that, it becomes so and so. And you see, if the moment is online, people will reach out to you no matter how remote. There's no remote place again in the world.
Right.
Government should engage youth through their government agencies responsible for enlightening citizens so that they can bridge the gap of communication. Because most people still think that social media is for maybe attack, insulting people. No.
Okay.
There are other positive aspects of it.
Okay. We're going to take a look at some more stories right after this break. Do stay.
It started more than 20,000. Also, this one, about 5,000 are fighters. And what is ongoing in the bush is a generation. They continue to multiply themselves. They are given birth and they are growing up. Whether they are fighters or not, their population is good to be curtailed. 2 of our local government headquarters areas are still under the control of Boko Haram. Manupatori, which is Guzamala, Abadam local government and Guzamala local government areas. We want to see this local government taken over by the owners. Who are the owners? Government of Borno State and the 2 local government areas. Leadership before the expiration of the tenure of this administration. But I want to also give you good tidings that the Nigerian Army is cooperating with us in ensuring that 2 local government areas are open for common operation.
As Boko Haram are surrendering in droves, the strength of the ISWAP is also manifesting and growing, especially in the southern border. Peace is priceless. We are spending 17 trillion this year. But I can say here again that in the period where we are faced with challenges in almost all the 36 states, do more so that under your leadership in this year 2022, it will be written in gold of history that you, Major General C.J. Musha, just as I mentioned, Obasanjo brought the Civil War to end, you will be the one that will bring the insurgency in the Northeast to an end.
Back is still Daybreak right here on Trust TV, and we're still reviewing the national dailies. So quickly, let's take a look at this headline on the front page of The Guardian. I mean, like, we've talked insecurity, we've talked politics, and we haven't touched COVID-19. So a summit here urges Nigeria to galvanize their nations to seek, other nations to seek debt relief. That's IMF wants global collaboration to boost Africa's vaccination drive. Now, this story is on the front page of The Guardian. COVID-19 has wreaked havoc on a lot of things, and so how do we equate that with getting debt relief and then vaccination? How do we balance the two?
Yes, so many economies are struggling. Yes, so the need I think this initiative or the call is timely, because the source of income of most countries has really been badly been affected. We're bouncing back, especially for countries that depend on crude oil to finance their government, like Nigeria. We're bouncing back until this recent COVID, Omicron also surfaced, and it started, and industrialized nation who buys our oil mostly start rolling back economic activities and other things. It's already affecting us and other countries too, because whether we like it or not, the economic dynamics of the 21st century is so interlinked that there's nothing one country can do that it will not affect the other.
Exactly.
So it's time for donor most of the countries that the creditor nations to look into this call. It's very germane at this time, because if we continue to service debt, it will affect our ability to finance our government back in various countries. And but debt relief will go a long way in cushioning the effects of COVID-19 on the economy. And I think on the issue of the production of African vaccine, there are institutions like ECOWAS who is talking about it, AU is talking about it. The prayer is that it should not stop at just rhetoric, just talking, and the rich nations are just there, and when their vaccine is about two months to expire, they will just
collecting any more
better stop collecting it and see what we can do. We have all it takes to do this, but it's just that just like we mentioned earlier, political will is the keyword. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the program. We've been speaking with the publisher, Summit Post News, Nelson Yakubu Omonu, giving us perspectives on some of the major stories that made the headlines on our dailies this morning. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Zainab.
And we hope to have you next time.
Thank you.
Well, now let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking economy. Do stay. All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television, and it's about time for us to talk economy. Now, World Bank has projected that Nigerian economy will grow by 2.5% in 2022, up from an estimated 2.4% growth in 2021. The global lender projection is below the 4.2 target set in the 2022 budget. Now, the bank in its January 2022 Global Economic Prospects report published on Tuesday said Nigeria's growth is projected to also strengthen 2.8% in 2023. It cited the rebound to higher oil prices as well as accelerated growth in the telecommunication and financial services. According to the report, global growth will decelerate from 5.5% in 2021 to 4.1% in 2022, then 3.2% in 2023. Now we'll be joined by the Managing Director, Afrinvest Securities Limited, Ayodeji Abo, virtually. But we have an economist and Governing Council member, Nigerian Economic Society, Dr. Tefa Abraham. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Zena. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're welcome to the program.
Thank you, Brian.
So I'm trying to find the relationship, because oil, that's crude oil now, contributes less to our overall GDP, but it brings in higher revenue. So to a layman now like me, how do we explain that? Because I believe if you have higher revenue, then you should have higher GDP. So how do you explain that?
Okay, thank you. One of the reasons the IMF, the World Bank projected that 2.5% growth, don't forget the World Bank projected 2.4 for 2021. Okay. So the only thing is that it still projects a higher growth for 2022, but slower compared to what Nigeria is projecting of 4.2. And one of the reasons the World Bank gave for that growth is crude oil price. And like you rightly said, crude oil generally is one of the highest foreign exchange earning export of the country, but contribute less to our gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is the Naira and Kobo summation of the goods and services produced in our economy, the 774 local government, 36 state plus FCT, quantified goods and services. So you can say that in terms of our domestic production, it will contribute less to the growth. But in bringing foreign exchange, it will be the largest. So that is a trick about that concept. So the difference between the IMF projection, the World Bank projection of 2.5% and that of our own economy of 4.2 is both of them still project that Nigeria economy will grow in 2022. It's just that the World Bank is staying more on the cautious part compared to the Nigerian estimation, which is more optimistic. Now, the World Bank is made up of 189 countries. Its role is to give credit of, and the World Bank is a global financial institution that gives credit of finance to these 189 countries to implement capital projects. The goal of the World Bank is to reduce poverty and then to strengthen, to enhance the implementation of capital projects. These 189 countries, they are represented by either Minister of Finance or Minister of Development, depending on the country. And they meet once in a year in an annual meeting that combines World Bank and the IMF. So our ministers of finance are part of the people who take that decision. In other words, they are aware of the decision. So like I said, in 2022, there's projection of growth. It's just that by the World Bank projection, we should be more on the cautious side. It's just like a one-way traffic. The Nigerian economy aspect for projection for 2022 puts it at 4.2. Yeah. So we are so sure that if it's a one-way, if it's a one service lane, that is just vehicles coming only to the right. The Nigerian economy, we are looking at the right, no vehicles, so we cross. So we are more optimistic of a 4.2% growth. But the World Bank is saying, even though it's a one-way coming road, let's still look left and right. Left is let's look at our insecurity. Let's look at our economy being a fragile economy. Let's look at double-digit inflation. Let's look at all those inability to implement capital projects, high debt, high level of debt that's accruing. So World Bank is saying, let's look at all these things and be very careful as we plan for 2022. Otherwise, they don't see our growth attaining 4.2, but they still see a growth of 2.5% from 2.4%.
Isn't it logical that we, as Nigeria, we wear the shoe, we know where it pinches. We as Nigeria, we know how our economy is, we know how our internal issues and whatnot. Shouldn't we be in the right position to say, okay, this is the way our economy is going to go, this is the projection that we have? Absolutely, Ibrahim, you are correct. And that's why I took a little time to explain how the World Bank works. 189 countries, Nigeria is part of it. So they meet annually through our Minister of Finance, which is also who is also a member. And when they meet in that annual general meeting, there's World Bank and there's IMF. These two institutions are called Bretton Woods institutions, started in 1945 after the Second World War, trying to rebuild. So another name for the World Bank is International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And they give loans to countries to implement capital projects. So looking at our domestic economy, I assure you that we have Nigerians, we have Africans, just like I mentioned earlier, our Minister of Finance being part of the meeting. So they see all those projections as well. It's not that the World Bank just sits in their office in Bretton Woods or in Washington and work out these figures. We are economists. We are friends. Sometimes we will serve as consultants to some of this analysis to give market feedback. It's just like you and I sitting in Abuja, but we can analyze perfectly what's happening somewhere in Borno right now because we have reporters all over. So that's how the World Bank is. It aggregates data. The only thing is that many development partners, civil society organizations, and even many economists on the radical left, because economics too, we always argue, on the positive role of World Bank. Some people see the activities of World Bank as being damaging to economies. Exactly. But personally, I see the World Bank and IMF as institutions that are partners for progress. So when they throw their advice, we should pick it and throw in our decision box. We're not saying we should take their decision 100%, but we shouldn't ignore. And why they put our growth low, Ibrahim, just like you said, they are aware that our debt is rising. And debt servicing is almost competing with capital project. If you now work out the ratio of debt to revenue, it will be very difficult. And don't forget their mandate. They give out loans to countries for capital project. The way they see our loans, our debt building up, especially from components they don't understand, like the loan component from China and things like that, they fear that in the long run, they may not even be able to fund our borrowing for capital project. Even if they do, they fear our ability to pay back. Don't forget, Nigeria used to be classified as a low-income country. We have moved to a middle-income country. So you become more harsher as your child grow up, so that the person will learn how to take responsibility. So it's our economy. We know where the shoe pinches, but we should listen to advice. Just like our parents talked to us before we got married, to be careful.
Now, the World Bank also projected accelerated growth in telecommunications and financial services. Would you say we are on the path to achieving that presently? Yeah, thank you, Zainab. Financial services, telecoms are major drivers of our current economic growth because of the ability to leverage on the digital economy space. Even in 2020, when there was global lockdown, COVID-19 shutdown, things like that, ICT was the sector that helped many sectors to grow. Any sector that was connected to ICT, telecoms, digital space was able to maintain its growth. So just like the report pointed out, so that it's a signal that if we want to help other sectors grow and remain on a positive trajectory, we must continue to sustain the telecom sector and financial services. But again, if these two sectors are driving growth, then we must find a way to connect other economies to it. I'm very happy that the government has finally reopened Twitter. Because one way for Nigerians to benefit from businesses through telecom is by allowing them to have access to their digital space for businesses, and then ensuring that we step up our effort on financial inclusion so that nobody will be left out, and so that our social investment programs can target low-income households very well using the financial sector. One thing is that even as we're innovating across our financial sector or across our financial space, it's important to do all those innovations through commercial banks. Otherwise, anything we are doing outside commercial banks will be frustrating CBN's ability to maintain price stability and ensure a healthy and stable financial system.
All right, so all these projections that we're actually making, all these economic projections, both the one made by the World Bank and, of course, the one made here in Nigeria, they're all tied to oil price, most of them, you understand. So, and we look at the current situation and then we try to see how the trajectory goes and then we make these projections. But what happens in a situation whereby those oil prices that we've hinged these projections on crash? Then what do we do?
Great question, Ibrahim. So that's why the Ministry of Finance, through the Budget Office of the Federation, representing the executive, works with the National Assembly, the legislature, to ensure that the Appropriation Act or the annual fiscal plan of the government, which is the budget, is premised on key assumptions. Currently, crude oil price is doing above $84 per barrel. And IMF even projects that crude oil price for 2022 may stay at 74. But if you look at the 2022 Appropriation Act, the crude oil price used for Nigeria's budget is 62. In case there's a drop, so, but your question is still on point, because if it drops below 62, they will be having a serious issue of fiscal crunch. So the concept of economic planning, especially on the fiscal side, is to choose a crude oil price benchmark that, by and large, having taken into consideration all the fluctuation and volatility in the international crude oil price market, it will not go below that 62. So while the price is above that 62, there's need for saving the excess revenue from crude oil earnings, so that should in case it goes below, we'll draw up that savings and cover the gap between the actual price and the budget benchmark price. Then while we are doing all that, it's important to strengthen our economic reform to jack up or to be able to jack up or raise or shore up revenue from federal independent revenue, internal generated revenue of 36 states and 704 local government, plus the area councils in Lagos. You know, generally, because the crude oil price will always be dependent on international volatility in the crude oil market. But the one we can be sure of is our internally generated revenue that that's coming from our own domestic production, industries, firms, entrepreneurs. So it's important to continue to keep an eye on oil price, because we need crude oil price still, crude oil revenue to even diversify our economy. But it's important to move away from depending solely on crude oil to domestic, just like Lagos is doing. If you look at Lagos, the component of Lagos State revenue from Lagos Inland Revenue Service and Lagos State Internal Generated Revenue account for 77% of Lagos State revenue. The contribution from the federal government to Lagos is about 18%. So in case there's a shock to Lagos State, for example, from federal government, Lagos State can still survive. The same thing applies to our country. We must do our best to raise the non-oil component of our revenue, so that in case there's a shock from crude oil price, we can still survive. And support for Nexim Bank to ensure that we expand the capacity of our non-oil export to also earn the way crude oil price is earning is also very important.
Okay, so Dr. Tefa, we're going to get quickly back to that and look at other perspectives, on the economy after this quick timeout.
Federal Capital Territory. The area council elections will be conducted on Saturday, February 12th, 2022. This is an opportunity for you to vote for the candidate of your choice for the positions of chairman and councillors of the area councils. Elections will take place in all 6 area councils of Amak, Abaji, Kwali, Gwagwalada, Kuje, and Buari. The FCT administration is working closely with INEC to ensure that the elections are conducted in a free and fair atmosphere. Are you a supporter of any of the candidates in the elections? Avoid showing your support through thuggery and violent behavior. All candidates contesting various positions should remember that only God gives power. Elections should therefore not be seen as a do-or-die affair. We must shun any form of violence, malpractices, vote buying, ballot box snatching, or anything that will make the election unfair. Be patriotic. Perform your civic duties. Vote for the candidate of your choice in a peaceful and orderly manner. Let all electorates exercise their franchise without intimidation. Voting is your right. Use it wisely. This message is from the FCT administration.
to Daybreak on Trust TV. Well, we're still talking the economy, and we have Dr. Tefa Abraham right here in the studio. We're talking about economic projections and what we have in store for 2022. So before we went on that break, we were actually talking about oil prices and how they affect all these projections. And you made mention of how when we do the projections, we actually give some leeway, some breathing space, just in case the oil price falls below a certain level. So just like you said, the projections were based on $62 per barrel. But if COVID-19 taught us something, is that unprecedented things can actually happen. At one point during the height of COVID-19, oil price was like zero. So what happens now if we made these projections that it's not going to fall below $62 per barrel, and then it falls down to like 15 or 10? How do we rearrange ourselves, so to speak?
Yeah, great question. Already, well, don't forget 2021 Appropriation Act was premised on $40 per barrel.
Okay.
And crude oil price is currently doing more than that amount. So it's important to save excess earnings on the crude oil price benchmark when the prices are doing well, because it might happen that the price will go below, just like you rightly said that COVID-19 taught us. For 2022, the Federal Ministry of Finance premised our crude oil price on $57 per barrel. But changes in prices in the international crude oil market space informed the National Assembly to raise it to 62. And if you look at the current price, it's above 84. So it is still within tolerable rates. The key point there is that we should do our best to save the excess that we haven't getting today, because crude oil sales is on a daily basis. When for 2022, we project 2021 rather, we projected that we'll be able to sell 1.88 million barrels per day. By November, we were doing 1.7 million barrels per day. So as of yesterday, 1.7 million barrels per day on the average must have been sold. So saving the excess from the difference is very critical. And the legislative framework to ensure that the executive arm of government adhere to that savings is another thing that we need to push forward for. Like the National Assembly can come in by ensuring that we actually have in place an excess crude account, a legislation for the excess crude account. It's possible to have it, but if there's no legislation, it will just be left to the prerogative of executive will, ensuring that the savings from excess crude is kept so that it can be drawn from when there's a negative shock. Is the point that is really critical to addressing that vital question you asked.
Okay, one other thing that actually bothers me in this projection is still hampering on the COVID-19 variant Omicron. As it states, in this projection, the threats from COVID-19 variants and rising inflation, debt and income inequality could endanger the recovery in emerging and developing economies. For Nigeria, we are still a developing nation, and how are we going to survive this?
The World Bank 2022 report already reduced the global growth rate from about 6 to 5, and for advanced economies from about 5 to 3. Where there's growth is in low income and emerging economies, including Nigeria, which the World Bank project that to grow from 2.4% to 2.5%. So for low developing and emerging economies, there's still prospect for growth. That report is only calling our attention to the fact that if the COVID-19 threat is not curtailed through effective global management and all countries putting their hands on deck to ensure that vaccination is adhered to and COVID-19 is just kept low from spreading, our partners that we're looking forward to getting foreign direct investment from may not be forthcoming. Our export may also not have the needed market. So even though our own economy is not hit directly by high debt rate, thank God for that, by COVID-19 and its many variants, we are still connected in a global economy through trade and investment. So it's important to still keep an eye on developments and events around COVID-19 and its variants and possibility of expanding. So what we can do from that knowledge is ensuring that we remain careful to COVID-19 protocols. This tiny advice from NCDC and World Health Organization and the federal government in general to adhere to COVID-19 protocol is important, because adhering to COVID-19 protocol now and scaling up vaccination rate has become a new investment signal for future investment.
Right.
Nobody wants to take his investment to a country that the investors are not sure of going back. Another thing we need to look at is insecurity, because the way our insecurity is going right now, global investors are seeing our economy as a fragile state, or as a fragile economy. All these regional geopolitical tensions as well, they are all bad for investment. So it's important to ensure that whatever protest North Central has, Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southeast have, it's important to do it within tolerable rates to ensure that it gives room for dialogue. Violence, protests, very strong violent protests, we just turn back investment, even from the local government that Nigeria's billionaire richest men come from. So it's important to ensure that, just like Ibrahim asked earlier and said earlier, it's our country. We know where it pinches. Right. So however we are doing our protest or disagreement, let us keep it civil so that investment can still go on. Situations where you destroy people's investment because of protest, it will take time for them to recover. And the few people they've been able to employ, they have to lay them off. These are the tiny things that add to slowing economic growth. Just this week, the survey, 2020, the survey for medium and small scale enterprises came out, and it shows that that sector contributes about 3.7% to our GDP growth. So if we don't support small scale businesses, that woman who sells rice at Karakose on the road to remain open will be affecting their means of livelihood, thereby worsening our poverty situation. So the concept there is that it's important to ensure that we curtail every risk, external and domestic, which includes COVID-19 and its many variants, by just ensuring that we tame them by complying.
Okay, now we're still trying to connect with the Managing Director, Afrinvest Securities Limited, Ayodeji Ebo. If he's able to join us, we'll continue the discussion with him, but we'll still be here with Dr. Tefa Abraham. Now, as all these projections come through, where will the issue of food inflation stand?
Food inflation is one direct link from our macroeconomic analysis variables to how it affects the everyday Nigerian. And even though our inflation rate has maintained its decline from March 2021 to date, as of March, our inflation rose to about 18%. It's on the decline, but presently it's around 15.44%. The key point is that it's declining, yes, but it's still double-digit inflation. Double-digit inflation is bad for investment, bad for food prices, bad for anything. Double-digit inflation of 15.44% plus unemployment rate of 33%. That's about 58.4% misery index. Youth unemployment is even worse, about 40 to 44%. 40% plus 15, we are looking at youth unemployment about 60-something%, meaning 10 out of every 10 young people in Nigeria, including boys and girls, 6 may not have jobs. Now, food inflation, agriculture is still major, the major source of agriculture, of food supply is from rural markets, from villages, from communities, from wards. And the ability to maintain, to farm sustainably has not been that possible in the last 3 to 4 years because of insecurity. At a point, terrorists, as they've been termed now, even force farmers to pay something to them before they harvest. So all these things affect the supply of food to the city. And once the supply of food is less than the supply of demand, food prices will go up, in addition to the existing double-digit inflation. And rural farmers, who are mostly smallholder women farmers, are also wise now through extension workers. If it costs them a lot to move their harvest from farm to market because of bad road that they have to grapple with, they will also factor in the cost of that transporting their goods into the price of the food they are bringing to the market. And also they are aware of the periods that we demand for food the most. So what they do is that they try to average the supply of their goods by ensuring that they are able to sell when the demand for good will be higher than the supply, so that they can also be able to sustain their livelihood, take their children to good schools, pay for healthcare, and afford the everyday necessity of life. So for food inflation, the government has to do a lot to ensure that in the market, when you and I go to buy these goods, we see government policy as we say as we report in economic analysis, affecting the price of goods. But what the sellers do, the final seller of goods and farm harvest in the market, what they do is that, don't forget, they've already stocked rice, for instance, since February, since March. They are also buying rice in bags today. But when you and I go to buy, they will sell the old one first before the new one. And they'll sell the old one at the old price. So for the agricultural sector, because our economy is not yet a very smooth economy that demand and supply forces work smoothly, there's need for price regulation. The way government, I always push this point, the way government does with Department of Petroleum Resources, by ensuring that filling stations don't sell above the current price, or they don't adjust their scale to the detriment of people buying. Government needs to do the same thing with food prices. There need to be a food price intelligence unit from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that when they conduct periodic assessment or monitoring of markets to ensure that prices of goods are sold, or for food is sold at the appropriate price. There need to be deliberate effort to ensure that that is the situation. But generally speaking, food inflation is something that is still terrible. And like I said, because of the existing inflation and challenges of insecurity and farm harvest, bad road, farm to market road infrastructure and the likes.
So quickly now, before we go, in just 60 seconds, there's this word that we've been hearing, I have been hearing, since I didn't know what it was, till I got to know what it is, what it means. Diversification. We've been shouting this mantra, we need to diversify economy, leave oil, do this, do that. Where are we on diversification?
Nigeria's story with diversification is a long one. Exactly. You and I, and I'm sure even our parents since secondary school, have been hearing this diversification. But don't forget, if you take a stock of diversification story from 30 years ago, that time there's no telecoms. From 20 years ago, that time no expanded banking service. From 10 years ago, that time agriculture is still largely a rural business. 5 years ago, so the idea is that diversification is slow. But if you take a stock of our economic history, we've made slow but steady progress. But the full meaning of diversification again, 20 years ago, Nollywood was not this big. 10 years ago, the music industry wasn't this big. 5 years ago, it wasn't possible for comedians and all those people in arts and entertainment to be this popular the way they are now. Interior decoration was not a big deal many years back. To be an ICT expert was not a big deal many years back. So this is how you take a stock on diversification. But for us generally, one area that's not benefited from the diversification story is manufacturing. Textile factories still down, manufacturing still not doing well. And if you look at our country's national development plan, these are some of the areas that the country's national development plan is still looking forward at recording very beautiful goals from 2021 to 2025.
Well, thank you so much for
coming on the program,
Thank you,
Ibrahim.
Dr. Tefa Ibrahim. He is an economist and governing council member, Nigerian Economic Society. We hope to have you next time as usual.
Looking forward. Thank you.
Okay, it's now time to take a look at Business Roundup with Chairman Dabeng. Do stay.
Federal government has deducted the number and duration of trips made abroad by ministers and other categories of government officials and other special allowances as it is set to cut costs to achieve fiscal prudence. Director of Information Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Willie Bassi, in a statement said the President, Muhammadu Buhari, will also cut down the number of persons permitted to travel with ministers and other government officials for official trips. Moving forward, all ministries, departments and agencies are required to submit their yearly travel plans for statutory meetings and engagements to the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and or the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation for express clearance within the first quarter of the fiscal year before implementation. In addition, only trips beneficial to the country must be embarked upon by the affected officials, noting also that ministers and other categories of government officials must not travel more than twice within a quarter of a year except with the permission of the President.
All right, that was business there on Daybreak. And right now we're going to move to sports with Adeni Ajishafe.
Action continues in African Cup of Nations Group F, where Tunisia lost to Mali by a lone goal. A penalty converted by Ibrahima Kone in the 48th minute lifts the Eagles of Mali over Tunisia. The Carthage Eagles of Tunisia had a tough match against the Eagles of Mali as both teams were equal to the task. The first red card in the competition issued to El Bilal Touré in the 87th minute got lots of reactions on Zambian referee Gianni Zikazwe. Zikazwe ends the match at 89th minute to the amazement of Tunisia officials who protested against the decision after he had earlier ends the game in the 85th minute in a dramatic encounter. In the second match play in Group F between Mauritania and Gambia at Stade Omnisport de Limbe, Abli Jallo puts Gambia ahead of Mauritania in the 10th minute in the scoreline that stood till end as Gambia celebrates win over Mauritania. Niger Tornadoes of Minna have been sanctioned to play their home matches in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and also fined 5.5 million naira by the league management company LMC. In a decision about match officials' assault and insecurity during Niger Tornadoes Rivers United clash in Ilorin, LMC sanctioned Tornadoes for breach of MPFL rules and framework in the course of the match. Niger Tornadoes and two of their officials have been sanctioned just as LMC requested the Nigerian Referees Appointment Committee to review the performance of the center referee in the match day 5 fixture. Tornadoes are to play their next 3 home matches at the MK Abiola Stadium in Abuja and a suspended 2 points deduction. Umar Farouk, chief coach of Niger Tornadoes, charged for assault on referee when he struck a blow to referee's head. LMC expelled Farouk from all MPFL organized activities with immediate effect with a review of his coaching license by the Nigerian Football Federation NFF as he is deemed to have failed the threshold to be a coach. In basketball, Federal Capital Territory Abuja will host 16 teams that will jostle for honors as Mark the Ball Championship kicks off. Competition organizers announced 16 teams for the basketball tournament. Local Organizing Committee Secretary Umar Abdullahi says 16 teams have been picked to participate in Mark the Ball Championship after a long wait of no tournaments. Air Warriors, First Bank, Sunshine Angels, Novena Queens, Kada Angels, Benue Princess and Plateau Rocks are part of the team selected for the championship. Others are FCT Rocks, IGP Queens, Taraba Hurricanes, Nasarawa Amazons, and many more. Mark the Ball Basketball Championship will dunk off at the Indoor Sports Hall of MK Abiola Stadium on January 15, 2022. Maiden Nigerian blind powerlifting and bench press trials holding at the National Stadium Surulere, Lagos is having 150 blind powerlifters drawn across Nigeria. Coordinator Barrister Silva Ezekwe says first of its kind trials in Nigeria is aimed at selecting the lifters that will represent the country at the forthcoming 4th IBSA Powerlifting and Bench Press World Cup and 2nd African Continental Powerlifting and Bench Press Championships holding between March 22nd and 29th, 2022 in Alexandria, Egypt. That's Sport News. I am Adeni Ajishafe.
Well, very, very interesting. You know, one thing that actually caught my attention in that sports roundup is the blind weightlifting, powerlifting,
yes,
they call it.
Yes, exactly. And you know, it's very nice when you see Paralympians actually getting over their disabilities to participate in sporting activities like this. It really gives you a lot of hope for Nigerian sports.
You know, I really think that the sporting world has really given people with disabilities that space to thrive, and I really do hope that other fields, you know, can actually give them more opportunities like this to even forget about their disabilities.
Exactly, they have their own Olympics. I mean, like, so it's fantastic for them. You understand?
Well, with that, we wrap up Daybreak on Trusted Television. It's been quite interesting. We've talked economy and other issues here on the program this morning, and we hope to see you tomorrow for another exciting package of Daybreak. My name is Zainab Bala.
And I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Let's do this again tomorrow.